The veterinary report at least suggests abuse, Mr. Raylo.
It suggests that the trainers strike him, but they have to sometimes for discipline.
One show won 14 Emmys in 4 years. Another pulled in 52 million viewers for a single episode. A third changed fashion forever and made sunglasses companies rich. These weren't small shows. They were massive hits that shaped entire decades. Yet somehow, they've been erased from TV history. Today, most people can't even name them, but their stories reveal the dark truth about how TV really works. Picket Fences. Imagine a quiet town in Wisconsin where nothing should ever happen, but everything does. That's the world of Picket Fences, a TV drama that ran from 1992 to 1996. It looked like a simple small-town show on the surface, but the stories were anything but ordinary. Each week, something bizarre would shake the town of Rome. Cows gave birth to human babies. People burst into flames. Courtrooms turned into theaters of chaos. And local judges seemed to invent their own laws. At the center of it all was Sheriff Jimmy Brock and his wife, Dr. Jill Brock, raising a family while keeping the town from falling apart. The supporting cast made things even stranger. There was a loud, unpredictable lawyer who refused to hear confessions. Medical examiners begged to carry guns, and Zelda Rubinstein, known from Poltergeist, worked as the police dispatcher. Every character added a layer of weirdness that made the town unforgettable. Even with all its strange moments, the show was taken seriously. Picket Fences wasn't just popular with critics, it dominated awards season. In just 4 years, it won 14 Primetime Emmy Awards. It took Best Drama Series twice. Kathy Baker won 3 Emmys for her role. Fivush Finkel, Ray Walston, and others also grabbed acting honors. At the 45th Emmy Awards, the show shocked everyone by beating Northern Exposure, even though it had fewer nominations. In total, 88 episodes aired between September 18, 1992 and June 26, 1996. The series won 30 awards and received 60 nominations, including Emmys, a Golden Globe, and a Humanitas Prize. Despite all this, its 1993 Nielsen ranking was a disappointing 80th. At its best, it only rose to 61st. But what really set Picket Fences apart were its themes. It tackled things that other shows were too afraid to touch: abortion, racism, homosexuality, polygamy, date rape. It handled each topic long before most network shows would even try. So why did it vanish from public memory? For starters, CBS aired it on Friday nights, a time slot known for killing even the best shows. Young viewers and working adults often missed it, and ratings never matched the quality of the writing. Then there was the tone. It wasn't a clear drama or a clear comedy. It wasn't a procedural or a soap opera. It was something in between, and that may have been too strange for most people. While Twin Peaks found a cult following, Picket Fences struggled to find its place. The final blow came from time itself. DVDs were hard to find. It didn't show up on streaming platforms. And unlike other David E. Kelley shows like Ally McBeal or Big Little Lies, it was never rebooted. It's almost never mentioned when people talk about the best or most important TV shows. Coach in 1997. Nobody thought the show Coach would fade into the background. It was one of the biggest TV hits of the decade. People watched it every week, laughed with the characters, and saw it as part of their routine. For almost a decade, it had everything: a strong cast, a solid story, and millions of fans. The show started on February 28, 1989, and ended on May 14, 1997. It lasted 9 seasons, with a total of 200 episodes. That's an impressive run, even by today's standards. The story followed Hayden Fox, played by Craig T. Nelson. He was a loud, rough college football coach for Minnesota State University. But the show wasn't just about football. It also focused on his personal life, his relationship with his daughter, his struggles with love, and his chaotic day-to-day life. It had a mix of humor and heart that made people connect with it. In the last 2 seasons, the show made a bold move. The characters left college football behind and joined the professional world. They started coaching the Orlando Breakers, a fictional NFL team. That kind of shift was rare for sitcoms. Most shows stick to one formula, but Coach took a chance and changed direction while keeping the same heart. The numbers were massive. The show was often in the top 20 most watched programs on TV. In one season alone, its finale pulled in more than 27 million viewers. It won 2 Primetime Emmys, including one for Craig T. Nelson, and got nominated 27 times in total. That kind of recognition doesn't happen by accident. So what went wrong? Why isn't Coach talked about the way Seinfeld or Friends still are? For a while, it was still easy to find. In the early 2000s, it ran on Nick and Night, but after that, it slowly disappeared. It didn't get the same rerun love as other shows. One big reason was the failed reboot. In 2015, NBC tried to bring it back. Craig T. Nelson agreed to return. So did the original creator. NBC even paid for 13 episodes, but only one was filmed. The network shut it down, saying it felt too old-fashioned. It became one of the most expensive mistakes in network history. Syndication didn't help either. Unlike other 90s hits, Coach didn't become a classic on streaming. It was hard to find, and when newer shows came along, it quietly slipped away. It wasn't part of the big nostalgia wave. Shows like Cheers, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Friends got all the attention. Even though Coach had the same kind of run and won major awards, its sports theme may not have clicked with the next generation of viewers. It's strange to think a show so big could just vanish. At one point, Coach was everywhere. Today, it's ranked as the 331st most popular TV show of all time. That's a huge drop from where it once stood. But for people who watched it, the show still means something. Northern Exposure. In the summer of 1990, a strange little show appeared on television. It took viewers to a fictional town in Alaska called Sicily. The town had only 215 people, but they were some of the most unique characters ever seen on TV. At the center of the story was Dr. Joel Fleischman, a nervous doctor from New York. He had expected to work in a modern hospital in Anchorage, but instead, he ended up stuck in this remote village as payback for a medical school loan. What followed was nothing like he imagined. Sicily wasn't normal. His receptionist, Marilyn, rarely spoke. She just stared calmly at him. The town's richest man was Maurice, a retired astronaut who owned half the place and liked to boss everyone around. Then there was Chris, a radio DJ who sounded like a poet and often quoted deep thinkers like Carl Jung. Maggie, the bush pilot, had a long string of dead boyfriends. Every local had their own strange story, and somehow they all made sense together. The show mixed weird humor with emotional depth. It felt like comedy, drama, and something else all at once. People loved it. By its third season, the show had 16.3 rating points on average, and one episode was watched by 26 million people. That's almost 1 out of every 9 Americans at the time. Over the years, it won 27 major awards, including 2 Golden Globes for Best Drama and an Emmy for Outstanding Drama Series. It stayed in the top 20 shows on TV for 3 straight years. The writing was so respected that the Writers Guild later named it one of the 101 best-written shows ever. It tackled topics like race, gender identity, Native American life, and what it means to feel lost in a world that doesn't follow normal rules. But just as fast as it rose, it started to fall. In 1995, only 5 years after it began, Northern Exposure was already fading away. It started when the network, CBS, moved it from its popular Monday night slot to another night. Nobody really knew why. That move alone cut its ratings in half within 6 months. Then Rob Morrow, the lead actor, left to chase a film career. CBS began bouncing the show around the schedule. It was taken off the air during key rating periods, then brought back, then pulled again. People lost track of when it was on. Ratings dropped from a 21 share to a 16 share. That meant about 5 million viewers disappeared. Even after it ended, people couldn't easily re-watch it. The show used a lot of rare music from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Getting the rights to that music was expensive, so the show couldn't go to DVD or streaming for a long time. Even when it finally hit streaming in 2024, many of the original songs were removed or changed. That ruined the mood for fans who remembered how perfectly the music had fit. Perfect Strangers. Perfect Strangers started in March 1986 and ran until August 1993. It told the story of 2 cousins who couldn't be more different. Larry was a serious guy from the Midwest. Balky was a cheerful shepherd from a made-up island called Mypos. He spoke broken English and brought wide-eyed innocence to every moment. The show focused on their everyday life together, from opening a bank account to discovering potato chips every small thing turned into something big. While most sitcoms in the late 80s relied on sarcasm and snappy one-liners, this one leaned on physical comedy, heart, and a sense of old-school fun. When it premiered, it was a surprise hit. Its first season reached number 13 in Nielsen ratings. That made it one of the most watched shows of its time. ABC gave it a prime spot in their Friday night comedy lineup, known as TGIF. That lineup would go on to shape the childhood of millions. When the show ended in 1993, it still pulled in 15 million households. That was enough to put it at number 11 in the ratings that week. Not bad for a final bow. One of the most memorable parts of the show was something called the Dance of Joy. It was a loud, silly, happy dance the cousins would do when something went right. Kicks, leaps, claps, and shouts. It was a mix of joy and madness. By the end of season 1, it became a regular thing, and in real life, it caught on too. People would do the Dance of Joy at school, parties, even sports events. The humor wasn't just on TV, it jumped into the real world. The show ran for more than 150 episodes across 8 seasons. Most of those years, it stayed in the top 30 for ratings. In the final season, it even climbed into the top 20. That's rare for a sitcom that late in its run. The stars, Bronson Pinchot and Mark Lynn-Baker, had a chemistry that was easy to see. At the final taping, the live audience was so moved, they cried during the curtain call. But the show's impact didn't stop there. It helped launch another huge sitcom, Family Matters. That show started as a spin-off, carrying over some of the same writers and even plot ideas. It also introduced the world to Steve Urkel. Perfect Strangers had unknowingly built a bridge to one of the biggest sitcoms of the 90s. At its best, it carried ABC's whole comedy brand. TGIF wouldn't have become a Friday night tradition without it. Still, for all that success, Perfect Strangers faded fast. Unlike Full House or Family Matters, it didn't get many reruns. The DVD releases came way too late. People moved on. The dance is still remembered by some, but few recall the show it came from. The actors didn't stay in the spotlight after it ended, and the story of an innocent outsider struggling to fit into American life didn't age as well in the world of quicker, sharper shows. Night Court. When Night Court premiered on January 4th, 1984, no one expected it to become one of NBC's biggest hits. It was set in a messy Manhattan courtroom that only operated at night. Everything about it felt weird and unexpected, from the setting to the jokes, but it worked. The cast was sharp, the pace was fast, and the show somehow blended pure chaos with real heart. Over time, Night Court became one of the strangest success stories in TV history, and now most people barely remember it. At the center of the madness was Judge Harold T. Stone. He wasn't like any judge you'd seen before. He was young, goofy, and obsessed with magic tricks and Mel Torme records. His courtroom staff was just as strange. There was the oddball public defender, a no-nonsense female bailiff, and Assistant District Attorney Dan Fielding, a character who made people laugh and blush at the same time. Dan was shameless, sarcastic, and constantly chasing women. Back then, he was one of the most outrageous characters ever allowed on network television. Even though the show aired late and had a strange concept, it didn't just survive, it exploded. Over 9 seasons and 193 episodes, Night Court became a TV powerhouse. By the 4th season, it had climbed to number 7 in the national ratings. It earned a Nielsen score of 23.2, which meant nearly 1 in every 4 TVs was tuned in during its time slot. That's a bigger audience share than most hit shows get today. And then there were the awards. John Larroquette, who played Dan Fielding, won the Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a comedy series 4 years in a row, from 1985 to 1988. In 1989, he actually told voters to stop picking him. No one else has ever won that many in a row in that category. The show earned 31 Emmy nominations overall and won 7 of them. Its reach went far beyond the U.S. Night Court aired in Germany, Italy, Spain, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Then, almost overnight, everything fell apart. During the 1991 to 1992 season, the show dropped out of the top 40. Viewership fell to less than half of what it had been at its peak. The cast started changing. Writers burned out. On May 31st, 1992, the show quietly aired its final episode. There was no big send-off, no TV event, no heartfelt tribute. It just ended. Reruns didn't last long. While other 80s sitcoms like Cheers and The Golden Girls stayed popular in syndication, Night Court faded into the background. It popped up once in a while on niche cable channels or during occasional marathons, but it never became a regular part of the nostalgia circuit. Empty Nest in October 1988. A new sitcom quietly made its debut on NBC. It was called Empty Nest, and while it started as a spin-off from the already popular The Golden Girls, it quickly took on a life of its own. The story followed Dr. Harry Weston, a widowed pediatrician living in Miami. Just when he thought he'd have the house to himself, both of his grown daughters moved back in. Carol was anxious and emotional, while Barbara was a tough, no-nonsense cop. Their personalities clashed constantly, and the house was never quiet. Add in the family dog Dreyfus, their eccentric neighbor Charlie, and the sharp-tongued nurse Laverne, and suddenly, that empty house didn't feel so empty anymore. The show was more than just a light comedy. While it shared the Miami setting with The Golden Girls, and sometimes had crossover episodes, Empty Nest tackled deeper issues. One episode dealt with euthanasia, another looked at Alzheimer's disease. These weren't typical topics for a primetime sitcom in the late 80s and early 90s, but the writers blended them with moments of humor, warmth, and heartfelt performances, especially from Richard Mulligan, who played Harry Weston with a mix of kindness and quiet frustration. His work on the show earned him an Emmy, and many fans felt he was the heart of the series. What many people don't realize is just how popular Empty Nest was in its early years. During its very first season in 1988 and 1989, it became the 9th most-watched show in America. That means nearly 1 in 5 homes with a TV were watching. In its second season, it stayed in the same spot, even beating The Golden Girls in rerun ratings, which was almost unheard of. By the third season, it climbed even higher, reaching number 7. That placed it alongside shows like America's Funniest Home Videos, Murphy Brown, and Magnum P.I. Millions tuned in every week. The success didn't stop there. Over 7 seasons and 170 episodes, the show brought in a parade of famous guest stars. Big names like Angie Dickinson, Morgan Fairchild, and Bobcat Goldthwait all appeared. It even got its own spin-off in 1991, a medical comedy called Nurses, which tried to expand on the same universe. For a while, NBC had a whole Saturday night lineup built around that world. But then, something strange happened. As the years went by, people just stopped talking about Empty Nest. When the final episode aired on June 17, 1995, it came and went with barely a ripple. Critics called it a quiet success. It had never grabbed headlines the way Seinfeld or Roseanne did. It wasn't showered with awards like Cheers. And as the audience grew older, it didn't pull in new fans. Some of the producers even joked that their viewers had simply aged out of the spotlight. Unlike The Golden Girls, which gained new life on streaming services and social media, Empty Nest faded away. For many people, it became that show with the dog. It didn't spark memes or get rebooted. It didn't stay in reruns. On modern rankings, it barely makes the list, sitting somewhere in the 700s. All of its early success, those millions of viewers, those high ratings, those big stars, seemed to vanish into the background. Miami Vice started on NBC in September 1984 and followed 2 undercover detectives, Sonny Crockett and Ricardo Tubbs, as they took on criminals in the heat and chaos of Miami. But what made it stand out wasn't the usual car chases or shootouts. It was the look, the sound, and the feel. From the start, the show was a visual explosion. Bright pastels, no brown tones, fast boats, real city streets, music blasting from MTV's top hits. Everything was carefully crafted to make you feel like you were watching something bold and new. Each episode cost about $1.3 million to make, which was unheard of for TV back then. The producers used real Ferraris, designer suits from Armani and Versace, and a soundtrack that felt more like a pop album than a crime show. Behind the scenes, Michael Mann and his team gave it everything they had. The stories were gritty, full of drugs, betrayal, and corruption. It wasn't just flash. There was substance too. too. It showed a darker, stylish version of Miami that felt risky and alive. Viewers weren't just watching characters solve cases, they were stepping into a world that felt slick and dangerous, like it could all fall apart at any moment. At first, it didn't explode in the ratings, but after reruns aired during the summer of 1985, everything changed. Suddenly, Miami Vice was one of the most talked about shows on TV. It broke into the top 10 in viewership. Don Johnson's laid-back style, t-shirt under a blazer, no socks, sunglasses, and a bit of scruff, became the look every man wanted. Ray-Ban sunglasses saw a massive spike in sales. Pastel clothes flew off store shelves. Travel agencies saw a rush of people booking trips to Miami just to get a taste of what they saw on screen. The critics noticed too. In 1985, the show was nominated for 15 Emmys and won 4. But not everyone loved it. Some thought it was too focused on looks, too shallow, too obsessed with pleasure. Still, no one could deny it was changing the rules. But like all trends, the glow started to fade. By 1989, Miami Vice was in its 5th season, and it was clear the magic was wearing off. Ratings dropped hard. It fell to number 64 in the Nielsen rankings. The style that once felt cutting edge now felt locked in the past. Neon, synths, and sockless shoes screamed 1980s, and the world was moving on. Michael Mann had left. Jan Hammer was gone too. A new showrunner stepped in, Dick Wolf, who would later go on to create Law and Order. He changed the tone, the pacing, the focus. Some of the new episodes felt strange and disconnected. One even involved aliens and a cameo by James Brown. The audience didn't know what to make of it. Competing shows like Dallas started pulling viewers away. The stories got weirder. The emotional pull faded. Miami Vice no longer felt fresh or dangerous. It had become a reflection of the decade it helped define. And once that decade ended, it quietly disappeared with it. Rhoda, it's hard to believe now, but there was a time when nearly all of America stopped to watch Rhoda. In the mid-1970s, this spin-off from The Mary Tyler Moore Show wasn't just popular, it was everywhere. Valerie Harper returned as Rhoda Morgenstern, the sharp, fast-talking New Yorker who had been Mary's lovable best friend. This time, Rhoda was back in New York, trying to start over. She moved in with her sister Brenda, played by Julie Kavner, and almost immediately met Joe Girard, a rugged, quiet man played by David Groh. Their chemistry was instant. The show leaned into Rhoda's brassy humor and emotional honesty. She was bold, loud, Jewish, and didn't pretend to be anything else. That kind of character wasn't common on TV back then. She was both funny and painfully real. Then came the wedding. On October 28, 1974, barely a few weeks into the first season, CBS aired a special one-hour episode where Rhoda married Joe. More than 52 million people watched it. That number still feels unreal. It was the most watched television episode of the decade until Roots came along in 1977. To put it in context, over half of the TV-watching population in the country tuned in. The episode even beat Monday Night Football in ratings. Howard Cosell joked during the broadcast that he hadn't been invited to Rhoda's wedding, knowing exactly why so many were switching over to CBS. It was more than just television. Across the country, people threw watch parties. Fans mailed real wedding presents to CBS, as if Rhoda and Joe were an actual couple. Some families pulled off highways to check into motels with TVs. Others canceled dinner plans. Vogue wrote about how people rearranged their lives just to be home in time. The only episode to ever outdo it was when Lucy gave birth to little Ricky in 1953. But just when Rhoda seemed unstoppable, everything started to fall apart. In the 3rd season, the writers made a bold decision. Rhoda and Joe split up. The idea was to explore a more realistic side of relationships. But audiences didn't want real. They had fallen in love with the fairy tale. Ratings dropped almost immediately. The warm, funny tone of the first 2 seasons gave way to something colder and sadder. Rhoda was single again, and many viewers didn't want to follow her back down that road. The problems didn't stop there. CBS began shifting the show's time slot again and again. In 4 years, it moved 6 times. Even devoted fans lost track of when to watch. By the final season, ratings had collapsed. Rhoda ranked 95th out of 114 shows. Some episodes didn't even air during the original run. They were quietly shelved and only broadcast later in reruns, long after most viewers had moved on. The legacy faded just as quickly. The show won 2 Emmys and 2 Golden Globes. Valerie Harper was celebrated. Julie Kavner went on to voice Marge Simpson. But despite all the talent involved, Rhoda was mostly remembered for one perfect moment, the wedding. It burned so brightly that everything afterward felt like a shadow. Today, it barely gets mentioned in conversations about great sitcoms. And yet, for one night in 1974, Rhoda wasn't just television. It was a national event.